Business owners are going to pay thousands, if not millions, in penalties because of this new law that goes into effect as of January 1st of 2024. And sadly, this is going to catch so many people by surprise. This is what is going to happen if you do not comply with this new rule. First, you can be charged penalties of up to $500 per day. Then you can face up to 2 years in jail time, and you can be charged up to $10,000 in fines. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BOI Reporting Requirements, which stands for Beneficial Ownership Information. If you own an LLC or a corporation, you are now required by law to file an annual report that discloses information about your company and its owners to the government. And if you do not, the government is going to penalize you. But don't panic. In this video, I'm going to break everything down for you. My name is Sherman the CPA, and I work with business owners every day at mycpacoach.com, and they are freaking out about this requirement. This can be problematic for people with a bunch of LLCs lying around or LLCs that they do not even use anymore. But if you watch this video until the end, I will tell you everything that you need to know. We are going to talk about who is required to file versus who is exempt from this requirement, which owners must be reported in this form, what information must be reported, the deadline, which you don't want to miss for this form to be filed, where to actually file it, and what to do if the information you file changes in the future. So let's not waste any time and jump right into this. All right, so first of all, who is required to file this report and who is not? So like I said earlier, every LLC and corporation must file an annual BOI report. Basically, if you registered with your state to form your business, you are likely required to file this form. Now, if you operate as an unincorporated business, such as a sole proprietorship or general partnership, you do not need to file this form. In addition to that, you are also not required to file this form if you are considered exempt. Now, typically when we hear exempt, we think about tax exempt entities like nonprofits, for example. Nonprofit organizations are exempt from this requirement, but there are about 23 other types of exemptions for this report, which range from banks, public accounting firms, to inactive entities. Now let's talk about inactive entities for a second, because there are a lot of people walking around with LLCs that they're not engaged in, and I know a few people who don't even know about all the LLCs that they've started that are connected to their name. So look, in order for your entity to be considered inactive, you must meet all of the 6 following criteria. Number 1, the entity must have been in existence before January of 2020. Not, you are required to file this report. 2, the entity is not currently engaged in active business. 3, the entity is not owned by a foreign person. 4, the entity has not experienced a change in ownership in the last 12 months. 5, the entity has not sent or received funds greater than $1,000. That's gonna catch a bunch of people. And 6, the entity does not hold any assets like vehicles or equipment. So if you do not meet all of these 6 requirements, your entity is not inactive, it is not exempt, and you must file this report. Most businesses will have to file this. There are over 40 million registered entities that must file this, so let's go ahead and keep moving here. So the second big thing is which owners in the entity must be reported. So basically, anyone who owns at least 25% of the entity must be reported, or any owner that exercises substantial control over the company. So even if you own less than 25% in the entity, if it is deemed that you control it in some way, you are still required to be reported. Substantial control exists if any of the following 4 criteria are met. Number 1, you are a senior officer in the company, like a CEO or CFO, for example. Number 2, you have authority to appoint or remove senior officers. Number 3, you make important decisions regarding the entity. And then number 4, they have this catch-all here. You have any other substantial control in the company. If you meet any one of these, your information must be reported in the BOI report. Now let's talk about what information must be reported. The required information appears to be very simple and to the point. For the entity, you just have to report the legal name, address, IRS EIN, or tax identification number, which can easily be found on your last filed tax return, by the way. Then for each beneficial owner, you have to report the full legal name, birthday, current address, and their identification number from a driver's license, passport, or another government issued document. And that's it from what I can see. Very basic information. But what's more important is that you file the report by the deadline to avoid penalties. So let's go ahead and talk about the filing deadline for this BOI report. All right, so there's 3 buckets of deadlines here. The first bucket is for entities created before January 1st of 2024, which will be most of the people watching this video with entities. If your entity existed before this date, then you must file your initial BOI report by January 1 of 2025 to avoid penalties. Now, the second bucket is for entities you create after January 1st of 2024, which will apply to any new entity you create going forward. If your entity was registered after January 1st of 2024, then it must file its initial report within 90 days of receiving notice that their entity's registration is effective. So basically, you will have 90 days after forming any new LLC or corporation going forward to file your BOI report. And then the final bucket is for entities registered in 2025 and beyond. Those entities will only have 30 days to file their initial report after receiving the notice. So as you can see here, the government is giving existing entities more time to file their initial report, but they will be shortening this timeline for entities in the future. But where exactly do you go to file this BOI form? Let's talk about it. So to file your BOI report, all you have to do is go to fincin.gov/BOI and click the File button. You will also find additional information and guidance to help you complete this form, or you can get a professional involved to help you. But wait a minute here, there is still one final caveat that still needs to be addressed, and that involves what to do if your filed BOI information changes in the future. If you don't get this right, the government can charge you penalties and fines. So let's just talk about this. So look, if there is any change to the required information you report in your BOI that you filed, you must file an updated report within 30 days after the change occurred. For example, if you create a new DBA or you add a new business partner, hire a CEO, or do something as simple as changing your address, that information must be updated in your BOI. The same goes for beneficial owners. If the owners change their address, that information also must be updated. Drop a comment below if you have any questions on this at all, and be sure to subscribe for more guidance to less stress and lower taxes.